Hi, welcome back to The Ultimate Question. This is part 2, where we're going to discuss why is God not present and visible in our lives? Now, if you've ever read the Old Testament, you see that there are a lot of instances where God shows his presence in an undeniable way. The parting of the Red Sea, the plagues that were put on the Egyptians, including the death of the firstborn, the pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke that the Israelites were led through the desert with, and situations after that, earthquakes, battles that they won. You see a lot of instances where God makes his presence and power very visible to everyone. So what's happened? Why don't we see instances like that today? Why don't we see God reminding us and demonstrating to us that he exists and the power that he has? Wouldn't that go a long way in making people feel like, wow, God does exist. Let me follow up on this. Let me do my part. Now, what would be the purpose and gain if he were to have this kind of periodic presence and exhibition of his power in our lives? Do we need that in order to be faithful to him? Do we need that in order to believe? Is that faith to have that kind of presence periodically to help boost and remind you? Another question, if God is supposed to be present in our lives, why do we suffer the effects of people who choose to do wrong? Crime, pollution, economic inequality. Why do innocent people suffer the consequences of those who choose to do wrong? Why does God not intervene and shield us or separate us from those who choose to do wrong? And another thing we're going to discuss is, does God really step in to guide us, to protect us in times of need? Does God intervene and change or affect the way that our lives go, our destiny, so to speak? So these and other things we're going to discuss here in part 2. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back afterwards with a summary. Enjoy. Okay, so let's talk about, why does God hide himself? Why doesn't he make his presence more known to us, more visible to us? And why don't we see evidence of his direct intervention in this world and in our lives? Now, one of the most important elements of God's relationship with us is our free will. We have the right to choose freely our commitment to him. And that's what makes it genuine, that our free will is us choosing and giving our love and commitment and belief in him. Whatever a person does, right or wrong, God allows it because he's honoring his commitment to our free will. Now, we know that when people choose to do wrong, it affects the people around them. So this is where we say, well, why doesn't God intervene? Because that person chose to do something wrong and it's affecting me. So it's still our free will as to how we react to these things. When something wrong is either done to you or you're affected by that. We can react in equal anger or violence, or if we have faith, patience, and trust that the ultimate outcome will be for a better way, we would be demonstrating to God our belief that we know that He is there, present in our lives, and that He can steer things even though at the moment it doesn't look like it's going to wind up as being something good. And we all know or have the experience of something that in the moment we thought was bad, but later on turned out to be for the better. Like somebody who's unjustly fired from their job and is angry and etc. and maybe even entertains the thought of, I'd like to wait for my boss with a baseball bat in the parking lot or something like that. But you don't, because something inside you says, you know what? I have to trust that this is the right thing that should be happening. And down the road, you find a better job that you really like, that pays better, and you meet your life partner in the process of that job, either by the commute or that works there. And then when you look back, you say, that getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to me. But you didn't know it at the moment, but you have to have the faith and trust to let that path unravel itself for you to see where it was really going to go. But sometimes we have an experience where what somebody does affects us negatively and hurts us. Like, say you were saving money and you put together $10,000 because you wanted to get a new car, or, go back to school. You have a brother who has a drug addiction problem. He happens to find the money. He steals it. And by the time you found out that he's taken that money, it's all gone. Now again, you could react in anger or violence, but you could also see it as, I need to intervene here. If he could do this to me, his brother who cares about him and has helped him other times, if he can do this to me, then he's pretty much given on everything that's good in life. And so you confront him, you intervene, and you talk to him and you let him know like how hurt you are and disappointed. And it may not happen at that very instance, but that could become the catalyst that makes him say, I have sunk to a low that is beyond addiction and everything. He loves me and I know that. And I sunk down to do something like that to him. And that's what makes him decide to change his life, go to a rehabilitation center, genuinely release himself from the chains of that addiction. And you would look at that and say, you know what? That $10,000 was a bargain for where this eventually took him to. I gladly gave that money to get my brother free as a hostage from that addiction. So it's how you react to something that happens to you. We have that free will. We're not automatically forced to take the negative, angry, because then we're just feeding the negativity in the world in general. So we're allowed to do what we want because God wants us to genuinely reveal to Him who we are and what kind of person we are and what do we believe in and what do we have faith in. Because that's what our lives here on this earth are for us to demonstrate over time and truthfully what kind of person we are. And there's a reason for that, which we're going to talk about in a few moments. But we're always seen, but we're just not aware of it. And that's how it should be. Now, imagine talking about like we don't see God's presence and intervention and etc. Well, if God made Himself really obvious and clear, like at one time, if you read in the Bible, in the Old Testament, God was pretty visible to everyone, to the Israelites, when He led them out of Egypt, when they were in the desert. They were guided during the day by a column of smoke and were guided at night with a pillar of fire. Now imagine seeing that pillar of fire at night, especially when you made camp and that fire stood over the tabernacle that you were supposed to build every time you made camp. It would be pretty hard to say, I don't believe God exists, when you're looking at that every night. So if he were to have that kind of presence today, a lot of followers would be following out of fear of being punished, fear of being extinguished when they die, not going to an afterlife. And that would not be genuine love and faith, because you'd be doing it with the idea that, well, I kind of have to do it because God is there. That's not what he wants. That's not love. That's fear. And that's not what he wants from us. So by not having this obvious presence, basically it's kind of the same as if you were going to have somebody come to your home where you have valuable things and etc. You don't really know this person too well. You want things to work out, and either it's going to be your roommate, or you're going to marry the person or go into business with them. So you have these valuable things. You're letting the person in your house, and you're going to be away at work or on vacation or whatever. You want to know what kind of person this is. Now, if you were to put security cameras that are visible all over the place, well, what are the odds that you're going to see the real person, the real character, the real honesty that this person has? Because the moment they see the camera, they're going to be like, uh-oh, can't do anything here because, I'm being watched from all angles. But if you hid those cameras and the person comes in and you leave, and this person's like, wow, there's a lot of valuable stuff here. And they're like, I don't think he'd notice that watch missing because it's in a drawer, in the back of a drawer. And I don't think he'd notice that money that I found in the back of, under the mattress there. So this person would be more inclined to act as they really are. If they're honest, they would be honest. But if they're dishonest, they would seize the opportunity under the idea that, well, they don't see what I'm doing, and as long as I leave everything nice and neat, by the time they find out, they can't blame me. And that's kind of what God has here for us by not being in our face, like you see sometimes in the Old Testament. We are free to be ourselves, and we can forget about God exists. We can even deny that God exists. Because if you can deny that God exists, I don't believe in God, which is part of what we're talking about here, it makes it very easy for you to then say, well, what is the reason to not take these things? Who's going to punish me? As long as law enforcement doesn't catch me, I'm good. So that's not the reason that we should want God as a presence, kind of like to keep us in check. You want to demonstrate that through your love, your faith, and your commitment to doing what's right because it's in you. So we can't say that God doesn't intervene in our lives. It's just that he doesn't make a spectacle of it when he does. And how many times have we felt the nudge that got you out of the way of an accident, or that helped you make a good decision, or that drew you away from a bad decision? Some people call it instinct or a gut feeling, but we feel that sometimes. And it should be, our relationship should be through a mutual love. In the Bible, in John 4:19, it says, we love because he loved us first. God loved us first. He created us. He gave us this beautiful world to live in. And I'm not talking about what we see today. The original world that he made and intended for man was incredibly beautiful and happy. We turned it into what it is today. We did this. So Now, by not being a physical presence in our lives, we sustain this relationship through love and through faith. Now, you know that the hardest relationship to sustain is one where you and the other person are not in each other's presence, what they call a long distance relationship. And that's very hard. How do you keep a relationship like that alive, a long distance relationship? By staying in contact, by continuing to interact with each other by whatever means it is, through a computer, FaceTime, phone call, letters. But that's how you keep the relationship alive, because when you hear their voice, you remind yourself of how good it makes you feel to have them in your life. And that is what we need to do with God. We need to stay in contact while we presently have this long distance relationship. And He's always there for us. But it's us who close our eyes to His presence, not Him to us. You know, you can explain away a lot of the things that God does in your life. Coincidence, luck, good luck, bad luck. His presence is real, but you have to allow yourself to see it. By reserving Himself to us, God allows us to show Him our true nature and reveal the sincerity of our love for Him, which is shown by how we treat others. And so only the eyes that have faith and allow themselves to see can notice the subtle presence of His actions in our lives. They're happening constantly, but you have to allow yourself to see them, and you have to believe that they're there. So to summarize, God keeps Himself in the background to honor our free will. You see, without having a heavy-handed presence in our lives, which potentially would be intimidating, we're free to demonstrate our true nature. When you're not being watched, you're more likely to be who you really are. And that's what He wants, for us to demonstrate and to reveal who we really are. Now, with that free will that we have, that also means that others, who also have free will, have the right to do wrong. And inevitably, that's going to affect us. We can't stop that. But what we do have control over is how we react to those situations. And our reaction should be based on the belief that in the end, God will lead us to what is of the most benefit to us. And that includes the benefit of those around us. You see, when we choose the right path, we also potentially can change the path of those around us, as we saw in the example of the brother who stole and eventually realizes that he needs to change. So when you choose the right path, you become a testimony to others that being faithful and being committed to doing the right thing eventually will result in the best result. God's intervention is real, but we have diluted our ability to sense and perceive His presence and action in our lives because of the cynical nature of modern man to want to explain everything away with science, statistics, coincidences. We are the ones who blind ourselves to His presence and the influence that He has in things that are around us. When we have good thoughts, when we're steered away from bad situations, when we're nudged out of the way of accidents, these things are happening. But the question is, do we perceive them? Because we allow ourselves to see what we believe is happening. So we see what we allow ourselves to see. But know this, everything that happens in your life has a purpose. And the purpose is to help guide and keep you on the path to salvation, to eternal life, and to rejoin our Creator in the wonderful and beautiful world that He originally made for us and that He has waiting for us to return to. So God's presence is real. Our ability to perceive it is more based on our willingness to accept that it exists. And then your eyes will be opened to see and understand, feel, be guided by, and follow the path that He has for us to live a safe, happy, and blessed life. Thanks for watching. Remember, the link for part 3 is below. Have a great day. Take care, and see you soon. Bye.